I know the topic of scary or rather disturbing stories from our childhoods are outdated, but I thought you might like this one. This one was from my high school years. It wasn't always rebellious. In fact, I was more of a goody two-shoes. I wasn't what you'd call an angel of a child, but I was still keeping up appearances, had good grades, was disciplined enough, and I had pretty keen manners. I hung out with this delinquent, Cody. He was a dick. I mean, a huge dick. Nobody really liked him, but he was quite wealthy, and while his parents were away, he would throw huge parties that half of the 10th grade students from my high school would go to. I was always invited to these, but he always started the parties at awkward times, at night, like midnight, 6 in the morning and stuff like that. His last party that he ever had thrown started at 3 in the morning, and my parents would immediately decline, so I didn't even bother asking. I know it wasn't of my nature, and now looking back, it was a stupid choice, but I decided I would sneak out. My dad always stayed up till 1 every night and never emerged from his bedroom until the following afternoon, and my mom always slept till noon, using I need beauty sleep as an excuse. Time came. It was the night of the party. It was about 1:30ish, and my dad had already stumbled into his bedroom and was snoring at this point. I slowly twisted the handle of my door to reveal the inky blackness of the hallways. Now would be the perfect time to escape. If not now, never. He lived pretty far away. It would take at least an hour to get there by foot, and he wanted me to arrive early to help set up. I softly closed my door and lightly paced towards our sliding glass door. I opened it slowly. It must have been a minute before there was an opening big enough for me to squeeze through. Once I was through, I took no risk and took another minute to close it again. I was outside, and the moon illuminated the ground quite well. I lived in the desert area, and the risk of coyotes was high, especially for a bright full moon like this one. But I had a pocket knife to defend myself. Also, I had a means of defense, which was a spray-on antiperspirant and a lighter, which people used as a makeshift flamethrower to scare away coyotes. I climbed over the chain-link fence and fell on the earth of the path that led on the side of the ditch below. I took no risk on encountering any muggers or shady people on the path. I slid down into the ditch below. The terrain was rugged and difficult to navigate. I had to dodge tall brush and jump over eroded crevices in the earth. I checked my watch. It was around 2:15 and I knew I must be close, because I saw a familiar house that I always passed by while walking on the sidewalk to get to Cody's house. Only a couple more blocks and I would have made it. The terrain had gotten surprisingly less jagged and smoother after a couple of minutes, and besides the empty beer bottles and cardboard boxes that littered the ground, something else caught my eye. There was a brown, torn up tarp that had a large, and when I say large I mean it, a large lump in the middle. I stopped for a moment and observed it, before my curiosity managed to claw its way through, and I slowly approached it. I touched it, softly. Just then, something enormous burst out in a low-pitched, wild scream of fright. I was knocked back on my ass, and I was frozen in fear, and I noticed a tall figure emerge from the dirt. It was a bear-like creature that wore a dark brown trench coat and light brown pants that seemed to resemble sweatpants. He had loafers on. They seemed like size 29. I know I'm exaggerating, but it was honestly inhuman. The bear-like creature stood up. He was tall. He must have been like 7 feet, and that even might be an understatement. Long white hair protruded from every visible inch of his body, almost like an animal. Its glossy eyes met with mine, and I was ready to run. I managed to stutter out a few words. What? I stopped, examining the creature once more. What are you? The creature looked at me again and let out a loud, hearty chuckle. He wiped a few tears of joy from under his eyes and gave me a smile.
Why, my boy, I am Mr. Trenchfoot,
he said, still grinning at me. His tone was nothing short of friendly, and that was the only thing stopping me from making a mad dash back to my house. He gave me a puzzled look and asked,
Do you by any chance know the date?
I thought he was joking at first, and I laughed a bit. Then I saw his serious expression. I stuttered again, but managed to collect myself. It's June 7th, I said. He looked shocked, or rather intrigued. He looked at me again, and my eyes met his once more.
My, I have been asleep quite long. It was November last time I was awake,
he said, still sounding jovial.
Now tell me, what have I missed?
We engaged into a conversation, and it lasted a good 15 minutes. We spoke about politics, the news on celebrities and stuff like that. I told him about school and how I was a part of the track team. We spoke for a while. I looked down my watch and noticed the time. I had about 16 minutes to get there and help him set up. I sat up from the rock on which I previously rested. I have to get going, I said. Mr. Trenchfoot stood up and wiped dirt from his coat and coughed before speaking. He walked towards a pipe, or rather a flood drain.
Follow me,
he said, entering it.
I need to show you something.
He crawled farther into the pipe, and soon he was enveloped in darkness. I dared not enter and stood there for a while. He turned, and the only reason I knew that is because the little bit of moonlight illuminated his eyes, just as it would a dog's or a cat's. I stepped back a bit, a little frightened, and reminded him I had to go.
Come here,
he said softly. He repeated, with each time he got more angered and menacing.
Come here. Come here. Come here!
He inched forward, just enough so I could see him fully. Long, black claws protruded from his fingers. He clawed the sides as he repeated,
Come here now! Come here! Now!
I ran, as fast as I could up the slope, not daring to look back at him. However, I did manage to look back once. He was standing there, too far to catch me at this point, staring at me, with his glossy eyes. I ran so fast and climbed over my fence, this time not cautious of not making any noise, and I ran inside, shaken up and frightened. My dad heard my heavy breathing and must have thought I was having a panic attack, which I was. He rushed to my aid. I explained something had tried to attack me, and he called the police without hesitation. I explained to the police where it had happened and who I saw. They took no time to rush through the area and scan it. No tarp of Mr. Trenchcoat in sight. I was there, my mum and dad holding me at a safe distance. I pointed towards the pipe which he tried to lure me in, and the chief motioned several armed men in. They didn't find him, however, and they still haven't to this day. Oh, that's my story. Creepy, right? Yeah, well, things have been the same. Well, I got grounded for a couple of weeks, but they let me off because they were glad I was safe. So I guess you could say this had been a happy ending. I guess for me at least. I still haven't told you the best part. You know how I said they didn't find him? Well, they did kick open a grate and entered a concrete room, no bigger than a walk-in closet. Again, they didn't find Mr. Trenchfoot in there. However, they did find something. They found Mr. Trenchfoot's tarp in there, still dusty as ever. In the corner of the room was a pile of bloody, torn clothes, not much bigger than the clothes that I had been wearing.